So I flipped the whole thing upside down. As you can see here, it's fairly well padded and supported. I did that so I can get in here and mark some of that excess plastic where I need to trim off, where it hits the side rails of the chassis there, but more importantly, so I could drill, see if I can get a view in that, get it to focus, right there. So I could drill a hole in there for the screw that holds it together. One there, one right there. Using Dremel tool, skinny little drill bit. I don't think we can see it without that flashlight on there. Maybe. But again, that's right there. That hole right in there. This will be the forward screws that hold it on. And it's clamped here. And those posts actually line up pretty good. I think I'll be alright with those. I'm a little afraid they might break off over time, so what I'll do is I'll put a piece of brass tubing over top of it, epoxy it in, give it some strength and support there. So I'll flip it back around and take the fenders off and trim up some of that excess plastic. Again, it's like right around here. See, I just got to trim that off to match that. And sand all that nice and smooth and pretty. Alright, well, I think this is looking pretty good. I got all the areas here, just in case, just to remind you here a bit. I added some pieces here to thicken that up on both sides. What that does is it centers it up. It centers it up right around here. So it holds, it holds that centered here. And again, right there is where the screw holes go in. And originally they didn't line up at all. So I added some pieces of styrene and filled it in, ground off the existing screw holes, and rebuilt that up. And I got those styrene pieces here all sanded down. Now this is just my first layer of filler primer after I sanded it down. I expected to see some, some few defects like this. There's a few others. But for a first sanding down and first application of filler primer, I think it's looking pretty good. Once that primer is dry, and you can see there's a few areas I'll need to touch up a bit, but I'm very pleased with that so far. I think it's looking pretty good. And I only applied the primer where I had to apply some filler. So all along in here, I had to thicken up this flange. I had to thicken that flange up here, because without that, there was a really large gap where it sat on the flange here. There was about 1/8 of an inch gap right along here, so I filled that in. I still need to make some brass tubes that will bond over those posts. Those posts are where it attaches right here. And I really don't trust those to not break off. So I had some brass tubes over there to strengthen that up a bit. I also had to, let me flip this over. I had to fill in that edge along here because that's where it was attached to the tree. And when you cut that off, it really damaged into that edge. So I had to fill that in and sand it back smooth on both sides. Had to do that on both sides. You can see, yeah, and it's this edge right along here. So what I did was I laid masking tape in thick, probably about 4 or 5 layers of masking tape, put in the filler, sanded it all smooth, and I think that's looking pretty good. Now as far as filler, for the larger areas, I used this, which I'm almost out of. It's Evercoat. It's a and it's a 2-part mixed putty. It's thinner than Bondo, fills in better than Bondo, so you get a cleaner fill. And for smaller areas, I just use this right here. Just it's a model making white putty. This is just air dry. You don't need any. It's not a 2-part mix or anything. And this actually sands down a lot easier. It's a lot softer. So once the primer is completely dry, I'll sand back some of those areas. Any little defects, we'll get that white putty sanded smooth again. Another few layers of filler primer. But I'm pretty sure that the fenders, they're fit. It's pretty much just a matter of primer, sand smooth. I'm not going to put the final color on it yet until the whole body's done. Once all the body panels are fit, the doors, the hoods, once everything's fit, then I'll paint everything at once. But hopefully by next week, when we come back next week, the plan is to maybe be working on the hood pieces, get the hood fit on there properly. And then after that, probably the doors. And I do want to do the instrument panel at some point. I mentioned that in a previous video about getting the instrument panel, and try to cut that mother of pearl for the instrument cluster there. But we'll see. So it's coming along slowly but surely. And one of my main points of posting videos of this build is because a lot of poacher builders, especially if they're new to poacher, like myself, I'm by no means claiming to be an expert of these, just thought that maybe we could help each other out. If you're watching and you're familiar with poachers and you see something obviously definitely I'm doing wrong, feel free and comment, let me know. Hopefully something I'm doing here can help you. If you're in an area that you're stuck at and you see something that I did that helps you, then that's great. That makes it worth putting these videos out. So I think I'll end this part here. Next week will be a new part, like I said, hopefully doing the bonnet, but we'll see. Plans change. So until then, thanks for watching.